Hey everybody, welcome. We're going to start in a second. Meanwhile, check out the world.
Hey, Joe.
They found the pizza. I
Hey,
love this.
Malone. So, Joe, I'm right behind you. I'm behind you, Joe.
Hey,
Hey, it's me.
what's
It's
up?
Riley. Just saying hello, sir.
People
That's what
already
we do
found
Yeah,
the
in
pizza by
VR.
the dumpster.
Socialize.
I
yeah.
love it.
I'm sorry. I was like taking. I'm taking screen grabs for social.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're doing a great job moderating. I mean, you're killing it.
Thank you. Yeah, those two panels went really well. I mean, yeah, they were on Zoom, but
Oh,
I don't know.
Yeah,
honestly, you
we
guys did
might
great. That was great.
Ryan. We might.
Yes,
He's having some technical difficulties, so I might bump him over to the Zoom, and I have the screen here, so
George.
might have
George is having some technical
George.
stuff.
Yeah, we'll get him for the next panel, but they're going to decide in a few seconds how to do it.
Okay,
Um,
if you need me on Zoom, I can. Is it a different? I just need a link. If it's not the same
it's
link
the
that
same
has.
Zoom. It's the same Zoom. It's all the same Zoom.
Okay, so I will
Um,
run and if
let me
that
make
works,
sure though.
go
I'm
over here.
they're on the checking it out now. I'll give you an update in a few minutes. Um,
Okay, that's why you
but
threw a screen up. Got it.
that's why I threw a screen up, just to have an emergency backup. He's having technical difficulties. Hello, Rose. I'm gonna add you as a friend. Reese's cup, Reese's peanut butter cup.
Hello,
Are we
how are you?
seeing what's that?
Great hearing you guys.
Oh, I know, and it's he
And
actually.
you do know that Ruth's in like Italy right now.
She's in Italy right now.
Yeah.
Garth, like he had a much thicker accent when I met him 20 years ago, so it was actually pretty easy to hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went well. I think
Yeah, I think so.
a good group. You know, you need a good group that can play off each other. And I thought Steve Orlando and Chris Christopher Priest were kind of
Yeah.
chummy. It was kind of cool.
This is great. He's always got just enough bitter in him
Okay.
to make it charming, but funny.
Let's just get the others in,
Yeah.
and then if a few
Oh,
minutes help
yeah,
us get get
he's got
this
my top picks.
this panel, we'll make sure to get him in.
Well, it looks like I might have to jump out of VR into
Yeah,
Zoom.
go for it. Yeah, go for it. On desktop. My
I
buddy
don't
joined
know.
via.
I don't know.
My buddy Chicago. He joined us via is the actual VR set. He said it was pretty
Oh,
solid
sweet.
experience. Yeah, on the VR. Yeah.
Ready
Hey,
to go?
everybody, we're gonna start in a few minutes. Here, I can do
This is a good. This is a real good environment. I like this.
Yeah, this is like one of the fun worlds. Everyone, we're gonna start in just a few minutes. George Romero's having a little bit of technical difficulties. He may or may not be going to more of a Zoom call, but or we're gonna get him in world as his avatar. Um, so just stand by, okay, everybody. But explore the undead district, aptly named and made for this environment for George C. Romero. and the whole zombie horror legacy he has.
Watch out for bugs.
So, yeah, watch out for bugs, spiders. There's pieces of pizza around if you're hungry. I see like some wolves over here that I may or may not want to pet. Enjoy the world. There's some cool interactables in here, and we'll get this started as soon as possible, whether it's live in Zoom, in VR, or on Zoom. Either way, you can still interact with George C. Romero and ask questions via the moderators. Yes. Okay, I'm going to jump off and go into Zoom then.
Everybody, how's it going? We get started in a few seconds here.
What are we doing here? Was getting up here?
See, you found the various things hidden in the world.
Creator George C. Romero.
This is cute.
George C. Romero.
What is this? I'm taller than you. Why am I jumping on you? You look like you're gonna be here for a while.
We'll take a break.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go.
He
Need to
said,
put
"Yeah,
my
but
phone. I
you
need
need
to get
that."
something to eat.
We're going to have a Zoom panel. George is going to start off on Zoom today, but
Bye, see you later.
I'm gonna see you later.
Right, see you soon.
looks like you're moving flames around.
Super Mario. Fireball.
Mr. Mario is a fire starter. Look out. Just FYI, I'm not sure how well preserved the pizza slices are if you happen to find one. So eat at your own risk.
VR puking.
I was very confused. Okay. There is everybody. As we were all here a second ago.
Where's the pizza? I want pizza.
I heard there was some around the dumpsters.
Delicious pizza.
Might be all out.
And we're basically good to go. Oh, we're live now?
I heard there was some around the dumpsters.
Delicious pizza.
All right.
Might be all out.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the George C. Romero Creator Spotlight. We had a few technical issues, but we are here with you at FanConXR. If you're joining us in virtual reality, then you are seeing this lovely zombie horror-themed world walking around here. Very cool. Nice little aesthetics. Oh, hey, Mario. I see Mario again. He was at our last panel.
Yeah, it's called the Undead District, George.
Yeah.
You'll have to come check it out when you next time you have your headset on.
Yeah,
absolutely. I had it on. There was some issues with getting in via that way, so this is kind of sadly how we had to do it. I've got an awesome character in VR and everything too. I'm really disappointed I'm not in VR right now.
Well, that's okay,
we're gonna get
but
it fixed, and
you're gonna
hopefully,
dig it.
hopefully he'll be ready to check out everything soon. We're working on the back end there, but we wanted to make sure, we were here for the spotlight. Speaking of the spotlight, Mr. George C. Romero, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your spotlight. You do a lot. You write, you film. You have Romero Pictures. You have a restaurant now, apparently, that I haven't been invited to, but I'm gonna go anyway. And like you work with veterans. You have a veterans compound that you help veterans find work.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about you and how do you manage all that?
I don't sleep. And you are always invited to my restaurant. In fact, I think there's a couple of folks from Heavy Metal who are going to be there next week, so I'm pretty excited about that. But yeah, it's a lot. But I don't know. It's that whole thing. If you do what you love, then if you love your job, then it's not work, right? So I try to look at everything I do more from a standpoint of not so much from a I need to do this, but more from a how do I approach these things in a way that can touch other lives, I mean, and that comes from obviously everything from filmmaking and writing, obviously, but with regard to the restaurant or the veterans compound, I just find it deeply fulfilling to help people. Whether it's young filmmakers, when I say young, I mean new filmmakers, or new writers, or our veterans who have been through so much, and maybe need a different perspective with regard to kind of what they're going to do once they're out.
That's great. George, let's talk about you as like a creator. Did growing up, was it something you saw yourself as a creative individual? You wanted to create, write? Let's talk about that. The early George, little George.
Oh man, I was born like this. I came out 50 years old and
beard,
smoking.
everything, yeah.
Cigarette, glasses. No, yeah. I mean, I think I knew at a pretty early age that I wasn't really cut out for sort of kind of a traditional life, and I think the more I kind of grasped as I grew up and got a little older, I got a pretty solid grasp on the fact that there was going to be nothing normal about my life. So I kind of embraced that pretty early on. And, there was a lot of soul searching and a lot of, well, what am I going to do? And, a lot of just trying to figure it out. And then one day I picked up a camera, I think when I was about 8 or 9, and I made a little backyard movie about, like, hey, there's buried treasure in my backyard type thing. And then that quickly just turned into a little horror short film. And, again, I was 8, so I really didn't have much grasp on, at that point, even really kind of the scope of who my father was or what any of that meant. I just was playing with a camera and set out to make a fun little thing. And the next thing you know, it got pretty dark. And I felt good about the fact that I made it, and I showed it to my mom, and she just kind of shook her head.
Yeah.
And I showed it to my dad eventually, and he just kind of chuckled at it. And, it was one of those, I all of my profiles list me as, I refer to myself as sort of terminally creative. You ebb and you flow with it, right? So as you're kind of growing into it, there's days where it feels like a gift and days where it feels like a curse. And you just have to lean into it and embrace it. But I think when I was a kid, it was definitely, it was creating things, writing stories, even as a little kid, writing stories. It was just anything that was creative or felt like it came out of my mind and onto something. There was there was almost a tangible kind of feeling for it for me. And it was turning these crazy thoughts that I had into something that I could hand to somebody and say, read this or watch this. And it was, it took a lot of things internally and made them sort of tangible to the outside world. And I found a deep satisfaction. And then as I grew, I just kind of, that grew with me. And, obviously as I grew, I obviously at a very early age began to understand just what it meant, who my father was and what all that meant. And, it just became this driving sort of factor in my life. That's exactly it. I became obsessed with creating, I think.
Your glasses aren't as square or thick as your dad's. I had the pleasure of meeting him and doing a signing at Golden Apple Comics back in the day. Lovely man, and obviously missed, and amazing you can carry on his legacy this way.
Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Is there video as well?
Especially with the books you're doing and Romero pictures, and I'm sure he's proud of you. So great job.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I had to streamline the glasses. I think he bought all of the existing frames on Earth of those.
Yeah, dude, copyright ownership.
Yeah.
So as a creator, like you have that moment where it's like this is real. This is like really what I'm doing. What was that for you? What was that moment or film or story that you wrote or book that you wrote where it was just like this is it?
That's a really interesting question, man. And I have this conversation a lot with sort of new creatives. When you set out in this industry, first of all, it's an absolutely crazy industry. It's just nuts. And when you set out in it, oftentimes the people that you think will be your support group turn out to not really be your go-to support group, right? Oftentimes, and that's often even self-imposed, right? So in other words, somebody might look at you and say, when you're a kid, say, oh, how's the little filmmaking thing going? And they might mean it just fine, but because you're a creative or because you're sensitive about things, you might internalize that or take it a different way. And so you spend a very long time saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a filmmaker, I'm going to be a director, I'm going to be a writer. And all the while you're actively doing it, and you're growing and you're learning, but you're still externalizing it and saying those phrases. You're still saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be that. And then you go out and you write your first thing, or you make your first movie. And at that point, you've actually become what you said you were going to become. But you haven't become the version that you obviously dreamed about becoming when you set out, right? So you go from like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, to I did this, but you still say the same thing. Well, I'm working toward this, or I'm going to be a filmmaker, or I'm going to be a director, or I'm going to be a writer, or I'm going to write comic books. And then one day you realize what I just said, which is that you're not going to do it anymore, that you are doing it, And I think for me, it was, I don't know, maybe after my third or fourth movie or something like that, I realized that I should stop saying I'm going to do this, because I've just made 3 or 4 movies, right? And then you kind of settle into this, I am a insert title now thing, which is now I'm a director, or now I'm a filmmaker. And then you start kind of going macro on that. And you don't, like for me, I didn't want to just be a director. I wanted to be an all-around filmmaker. So that's why I spent so long working to learn all the different departments and all the little elements and aspects of filmmaking. So you're actively doing it, but you're still not kind of where you envision yourself. So it becomes this huge internal battle. And then one day you realize that you're just fucking arguing with yourself for no reason, because you're now doing what you set out to do. And you have to settle into the moment when you get to really enjoy it enjoy the ride, and then your focus shifts from like, these are my goals, to purely creative, and you're just focused on whatever it is you're doing, whether it's writing or filming or, you know, lighting or cooking or whatever it is. And it's like this moment of bliss, and you realize that you're doing exactly what you set out to do, and you're getting paid to do it. And now you've gotten to the point where you're just focused on the part that you always dreamed about being focused on, which is the pure creative of it all.
Gotcha.
And then one day you wake up and you've got a little bit more in the rear view than you have in the headlights, and you realize that it's really just a job, but you're the luckiest person in the world, because your job means that you get to just be creative. And then like the relaxing comes, right? For me, I'm sorry for such a long answer, but it's a really interesting question, and I get asked it a lot, and long conversations about it, but that's generally my take on it. So
this is a creator spotlight, so you take as long on these questions and whatever you want.
Yeah, we have nobody else to answer questions but you.
Yeah, so this is perfect. And
cool.
that was a great answer. Honestly, I think we got a lot from that and a lot of depth, so I appreciate that. Going into writing, obviously, I know you from heavy metal, and that's how we know each other. But you've written other things as well. Let's talk about some of the things you've written. They can be heavy metal or not. But what are some of your favorite stories that you've got to tell in writing?
Oh man, hands down, it's the stuff with heavy metal. I mean, are you kidding me? Cold Dead War is one of my favorite things I ever wrote, you know. And obviously The Rise is like one of the most important things, you know, in my entire heart, in my entire being. It's literally the most important story I've ever written, to me, you know. So the opportunity to do those with heavy metal was like a dream, you know. It was another, like, exactly what I was just talking about. It was like I grew up reading heavy metal. I grew up on all that stuff, and I grew up just thinking how cool it was. And now here we are. I'm writing.
Well, I obviously know those titles, but let's tell us a little bit about Cold Dead War and The
I did
Rise.
down here. I don't know how to get up.
Sure. Cold Dead War is a story that Matt asked me to come on and write, and it's a great story set inside a universe that has existed in heavy metal for a long time, and it's the story of undead soldiers in World War II, just after World War II, actually, going sort of on I do a lot of alternative history stuff, which you obviously know, but so it's a really out there story set in an alternative version of an already alternate history. So essentially it's the story of a squad of zombie soldiers going after Nazis that are hiding in Argentina in the 50s. And man, it was just the idea was such a grand, massive idea that the rabbit hole I had to go down to write that was just intense. It was awesome.
Is that you that was
and I loved writing every minute of it. And then The Rise obviously is my own. It often gets mistaken for a prequel because it takes place prior to Night of the Living Dead, but it is, and you know this very well. I treat it as much more of a true, honest to God origin thing, right? So it's a story that spans 6 years prior to 1968, and it's essentially my personal sort of origin story of the creatures, of the ghouls and everything. It's a story that I've carried for a very long time. It's a story that I actually always wanted to do as a comic first, And so when Matt brought that up to me, you know, it was a no brainer to jump at that. And it's great. There's still several more issues that need to get published. So I don't want to kind of give too much away because it's not all out there. But I think about half of the story has been published already. So you know, those are all available through Heavy Metal, and I hope everybody goes to check them out. It's literally the most important story personally to me that I've ever written. So
If you
I hope
can
people go
see
check it
one
out.
of the other screens, if you can see one of the other screens, George, I don't know what view you're in on Zoom, but you can see the Undead District world, and we have your covers up of
Oh, cool! I see it.
Rise and Cold Dead World. But check out the other one. Looks like you just put a novel out, Lost in the
If
Woods.
anybody has any
Wanna talk about
questions,
that?
just come find me over here. You can ask me your questions and we'll
my
ask them
entire
of George.
approach to screenwriting is
I'm over
a little
here with
bit
my
different,
hand
I
up
think,
if
than
you
a
have
lot
any
of other writers.
questions.
And
I'm here.
I've worked with a
Where
lot of
did you
new
go?
filmmakers and new writers to kind of
Hi.
walk them
I was
through
Did you have
that
a
curious to
question?
know
process.
if
And this is the first
I'm curious
of
to
a
know if he
series
hangs
of
out with
books that
Tom
I'm writing
Savini
about
living in
that
Pittsburgh at
process.
all.
And you know, I
Let
think
me ask.
anybody
Hold
who's
on a minute.
interested in
What his
writing should definitely
relationship
pick it up at
has been with Tom
romeropictures.com
since his
because
father's passing.
it's a whole new way of looking at it that I think is extremely freeing, and it frees you to do nothing but just think about the creative and kind of let it flow. You know, it's I didn't even
They
know
live
you
in
had
the
that up
same
there. That's
city and
cool.
all. I think they
Thanks
both
for
live in
putting that up
Pittsburgh.
there, man. I didn't think anybody.
Well, yeah. I went to your website. I went to Romero Pictures, and I saw you guys were promoting it, and I was like,
yeah,
this is about you and everything. I mean, even if I would have put your restaurant up, I could have. What tell us about your restaurant real quick, and then we might get to some questions from people in VR. That's one of the reasons I'm on here, and you don't even know me very well, but it's because I'm relaying some questions from actual Avatar folk in the VR world. So let's talk about your restaurant for a minute, and then maybe we'll get some questions.
Yeah, sure. Look, I've been kind of chefing my way around the country since I was a kid, and you know, I traveled around the country in sort of unconventional methods, and I learned at a very young age that if you could cook for people, you were in a lot less danger. So
you're speaking to me, man. I'm all about cooking and food, and I worked in catering, and
yeah,
you know, I would probably own a restaurant if my father didn't start a iconic comic book store. You know, and you might have been just a world-class chef and not doing pictures if your dad didn't do what he did. You know.
Yeah, maybe. And you know, it's always been cooking to me has always been one of these sort of creative outlets, right? It's like, you know, look, here's one of the things when you make a movie, it can take you 5 years to raise the money, and then it can take you a year to pull it together once you raise the money, and then it could take you another year to edit it, unless you've got big studio money that can come in, right? So you've got this creative thing that you're doing that literally takes years off of your life to get it done. And so that's like when I was in advertising, that's why I loved doing commercials, because you come up with an idea, pitch it to the client, shoot it in a day or 2 days, have it posted in, you know, by the end of the week, and there's like a bit of creative closure, which is one of the biggest problems I think with new filmmakers, is that it's such an open-ended process when it comes to filmmaking that people can get stuck in that. And so what you need to have is something that gives you that gratification and that sort of that sense of closure with a concept, right? And short films are great for that, commercials are great for that, and for me, the other thing that's great for it has always been cooking as well.
What's the theme of the restaurant? What kind of food you cook? What is it?
It's like a creative kitchen. Like it's all Spanish and Cuban based. But being born in Pittsburgh, right? Like we do some great pastas, but I do a Spanish twist. So instead of like a traditional carbonara pasta, we do a Spanish carbonara that's like spicy, and it's got chorizo sausage in it, and it's phenomenal. And you know that we do a lot of Cuban street food and a lot of like Cuban family meals, and then football just started up, and we're in Kentucky, but as you know, I was born in Pittsburgh, And so football season just started up, and someone came in the other day, and it was a buddy of mine, and he was joking around, and he said, you know, what is football season? What are you going to do all this stuff? Like, people are going to want to come in here and watch football, then eat sandwiches. What, are you afraid to do a sandwich? Now, if you know anything about people from Pittsburgh, like, we sandwich very well. So I took it as a personal challenge. And we've come up with these sandwiches that we're doing that, again, we bring all the Spanish flavors and the Cuban flavors into these sandwiches, but they're these epic monstrosities of, like, we've got one that I actually called the Pittsburgh, and it's an homage to sandwiches that I used to eat all the time in Pittsburgh, and it's got, like,
Yes,
you
you
know,
should
half a
share
pound
the
of
spider.
beef on the bottom, 2 whole pork chops, like a quarter pound of ham.
He's zeroing
Like,
in on it,
you
the
know,
camera.
like melty Swiss, and then all of our hand-cut, like a whole order of our massive hand-cut French fries. Because we're in Kentucky, right? So I get my produce from, like, these farms that grow these like monster,
You guys look like you're hugging.
you know, potatoes and all this, and it's just fun, man. It's like, it's amazing, and we don't have a regular menu. It changes. I change the menu daily or every other day. We have a Facebook presence, and I'll go on there and be like, hey, I got 10 steaks, who wants them? You know, we're going to sell these steaks till they're gone. And
And it's kind of organic, like it's whatever. Every day can change a little bit. That's great. You do what you want. You're not stuck. You're not stuck with In-N-Out Burger that has 6 things on their menu, and that's all.
Yeah.
Right. And like, we threw our microwave out, so we don't have a microwave, and everything is made fresh to order. And, you know, we've got 59 seats, including the bar, and it's small and it's intimate. And we've got art from a local artist named Mike Minter all over the place. And we've got one side of the place that's the dining room, and the other side I'm working hard to convert it into like an art lounge, so that when the dining room's full up, people can
Very
go
cool.
next door.
I have a question from someone in VR. So this is
Yeah.
where I do
Knock it out.
that part. So this person is Clergy Burner, wants to know about if you still have like a relationship with Tom Savini. You guys hang out, or do you have like a professional working relationship, or more of a personal relationship, or you just haven't seen him since forever?
Oh, I love Tom. I always loved Tom. I used to go to his workshop with my dad when I was a kid.
Did you have a
and all that
question?
stuff, but you know, I think he's just great.
He is. He is.
Yeah.
I've gotten to
No?
meet him
Okay.
a few times, but
Can you hear me? This is me.
yeah, I think Clergy Burner thinks you
wasn't
guys
me
just hang out and
clearing my
smoke
throat.
cigarettes and eat
Someone's
giant
clearing their
whole
throat.
hog sandwiches on every day. But maybe not. But sounds like you guys are buddies.
If anybody
Jeremy,
has a
did you have
question, please
something,
come find me. I
George,
have a
I've
hand
been
raised over my
following you
head.
on social media,
If you have a
ever since
question
we
for
started working
George,
together,
please come
and
find me
I
and
see
ask
the
your
food that you
question.
make all the time. So I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask straight up: is the brisket on the menu?
No, and it's not because I'm not allowed to run a smoker in city limits.
Oh,
and
man.
because of like the health code
yeah, it's
stuff,
not me.
I'm not allowed to smoke something at home and then transport it to the
Usually a heavy
restaurant.
person breathing.
I'm working on it though. I'm working.
Because that I see pictures of that brisket, and I'm like, can I afford a trip to Kentucky right now? What's my budget looking like to go eat at George's house?
Listen, all you have to do is give me like a 2-day notice, because I smoke it for like 21 hours. So
It looks so good.
it's
Do you have
ridiculous.
do you have any like nods to zombie stuff or films on your menu, or drinks? Any fun drink?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of drinks. Actually, we've got a shot that we do that we call the Romero Zombie, and it's got like we serve it in these little skull-shaped shot glasses, and it looks like brains and everything. It's pretty awesome. And then, you know, it's funny, we do another drink that sort of my writing hero was always Hemingway. I know that's cliche, but I'm old enough to where it wasn't cliche when he became my writing hero. So what a lot of people don't know is he actually invented a drink called Death in the Afternoon,
but he couldn't get his headset to log
and it's an absinthe drink, and we're the only place in Kentucky to
He'll
have
be
it.
back
So
at 7. We're gonna
Nice.
try to get him.
And then I've obviously got a bunch of memorabilia and stuff like that hanging up around the joint.
I didn't catch the name of the restaurant. I apologize. I don't think we said it.
Oh yeah, no, it's called Romero's.
Oh,
Yeah.
You dug
And on
deep to figure
Facebook,
that one out. Yeah.
So
on Facebook, it's yeah,
where in
Romero's
Kentucky?
Yeah.
Romero's where? What city in Kentucky is it in?
So it's in a little town called Mount
Yeah,
Sterling,
absolutely.
Kentucky.
What's your question? Do you have another one?
It's this awesome,
Yeah,
beautiful
what's
little
his take
city full
on
of the
his
best people
father's
ever.
Blue Zombies and Dawn of the
And
Dead? Because in Night of
we
the Living
were
Dead,
lucky enough.
Savini
My wife
compared
and
the
I have
zombies
wanted to
with
do
a
this
darker
pretty much
shade
since
of
we've been
blues.
together,
This way you
and
wouldn't
we've
come in
tried
with
to
black and
actually
white
get this
filming.
location a few
And then
times,
George told
and we
Bob
always
they were
missed
the
it
same
by
way
like a
in
day
Dawn
or
of the
two.
Dead, so they wound up putting it
And
really dark.
so we finally just had an opportunity and just jumped at it. So we got this location, and it's literally the main corner of downtown. So everybody traveling from surrounding counties has to pass it as well. And it's beautiful. It's got like this big front window, and it's just awesome. And it's got this great old antique vintage bar in there, and it's got hardwood floors and a big brick wall, and you know, it's a real vibe. It's just awesome.
So what do
So
you have
if
to
you're in
say about the
Kentucky,
Blue
stop by
Zombies and Dawn of the
Romero's.
Living Dead?
Yeah, definitely come by.
What other projects you working on that you're excited about that might you want to plug that might be coming out or that you want people to know about?
The biggest thing I'm doing right now is just trying to make sure that the last half of the Rise is as epic as the first half. So that's like I'm dead serious when I tell you, when it comes to my, personally, it is the most important story I've ever written. And so that is my absolute 100% primary focus right now, is to make sure that we've put a lot of time and energy and effort into getting the first half of this story out with the best art and the best magazine and the best everything. Like my primary focus is making sure that the second half kills it. And then I'm writing, I've already finished volume 2 of the screenwriting book series. I'm currently writing volume 3 of it, and I'll be releasing volume 2 probably next month, I'm hoping. And then there's a couple other novels and books and everything that I'm close to finalizing the deal on. And then I'm also launching a line of coffee. So, and
Coffee?
then,
Did you
yeah,
make coffee?
I did, yeah.
Oh wow.
I'm a coffee freak, so I'm launching that, and that's called Resurgent. And then of course the Veterans Compound. We are still, we do as much as we can with the resources we have. Nonprofits, as you know, are
different flyers.
they're not the richest organizations out there.
Lindsay,
So
are you amplified?
I
our
do know,
goal.
yeah. My wife and I just started a 501c3. It's a labor of love.
It really is. And eventually our goal is to eventually get like a horse farm here in central Kentucky, and actually be able to operate it as a brick and mortar facility and help large groups of veterans at a time. Right now it's more of a it's more of a one-on-one type situation that
So
we're doing.
I'm glad you brought up the Veterans Compound, because I know in other conversations about it, we talked about how it helped influence a lot of stuff when you were writing Cold at War. But how did that start? How did you start into like, I want to do a veterans charity?
Well, I tried to join actually the Marines 3 times when I was young, and they found in 90 it still mattered. A couple of things still mattered that they found with me, like asthma. So I couldn't do it. And that bothered me for a long time. Then I went off and I had this sort of weird life. And throughout that life, most of the people that I met that really became important in my life were veterans. And I just got to be accepted by a lot of guys, by a lot of sort of retired military guys, and a lot of them who were, in special forces type stuff,
After the fall,
and a lot of them who carried a lot when they came home. And it was extremely organic how it happened, and it honestly just kind of happened one day when I was talking to a guy, and he just kind of started letting it all out. and I wasn't even sure what to say because I didn't have the experience, right? So I just kind of suggested that maybe he writes something. And, he said, I don't know how to do that. And I said, it doesn't matter if you know how to do it. You know how to talk, just write down your words. But write down the stuff that you don't feel like you can say, And I don't know, a couple of weeks later, he called me up and he said, would you be willing to read something? I did what you said. And I said, yeah. So I read it, and obviously there was no formatting, but it was raw. And, he told me that since the day he started putting it on paper, he stopped waking up with his night terrors and all that other stuff, and kind of a light bulb went off. And then one day he called me up and asked me if I would talk to one of his buddies. And that's literally kind of how it started going. And then my retired gunny and my wife both pushed me very hard to formalize the concept into an actual organization. And so that's kind of how that all happened.
That's awesome. Yeah, congratulations. And it's important work. Back to fun, awesome things that people want to know about. Someone's interested in your opinion of blue zombies, and if that's something you feel a certain way about, how they had to do the blue zombies because of the black and white movie, but they kept it. So what's your blue zombie story?
I think it's a great name for a cocktail.
It is. It's great. Some blue curacao in there, a little grenadine.
Yeah, that's awesome. Put it in the restaurant.
Yeah, who is that person? I want to give them credit.
Yeah, actually what's happening is some people are coming up to the screen since we moved to Zoom, and they're taking selfies with you.
Oh,
so
really?
Give a big shout out to everybody in VR there.
That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. That's really cool. Yeah. I'm not really sure what to say about that, other than I literally think that you just gave me a drink title for the restaurant. So, I mean, and now that's kind of all I can think about. So thank you, whoever asked that question.
Let me form that into one that I know you've answered before. What do you think about the different types of zombies and the different takes on it?
I think it's wonderful. And I think, look, here, Jeremy, you and I have actually talked about this a lot, what those guys did in 1968 unknowingly. And I know it had to sting, but what they did was they ultimately created an open source creature. And I talk a lot about this. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. I think that the playing, the sort of the sandbox for them has gotten so big over time that they became a sort of a proving ground for a lot of creatives. There was nobody to stop people from making zombie movies or writing zombie stories. There was no fear of consequence. And while I know that had to sting for all of those guys back then, and sucked for them, if you try to look for the silver lining in it, I think, we've got so many different twists and takes. We've got, they have literally done what zombies do and infected every bit of creativity. They've infected, everybody from authors to musicians to, dancers to poets to filmmakers and effects artists and painters. And it's amazing. So how can you hate anything out there, right? Yeah. Because it all comes from, and especially like somebody like me, right, who is obviously, my dad did it, right? So how can you hate anything anybody ever did? Because the one thing you can say about zombie creations, zombie creative, is that if somebody's doing it, they're doing it out of love for like what my dad did. Like, that's really fucking cool.
It is. That's a perfect transition to the next question. We have Woodstock Ross, who told me his brother faked being sick during high school so he could watch your dad's movies. Literally to stay home and watch the movies, or go to the movie theater to see the movies. But do you have a favorite of your dad's films? Is there one that is just you've watched over and over, just as your personal favorite?
Well, yeah, it's got to be Night. It's got to be the original Night,
The
right?
original.
I mean,
Yeah,
like
the
I
original.
saw, yeah. I mean, the first time I saw it was I was playing around in the basement of my mom's house, and I found an old projector and a bunch of these old film reels, and and so I started spooling them up, and it was like this creepy basement, exactly like how you're picturing it, and it was damp and underground, and I started spooling these things up, and one was like, my dad did tourism films for the state of Pennsylvania, and there was like some of that in there. And there was like some other stuff in there that he'd made, and then I just spooled this one up that just said the word Night was written on a piece of tape on the film can. I spooled it up, and I ended up sitting there watching Night as a little kid, like on a film projector in the basement of my mom's house, and it screwed me up. And so I became absolutely obsessed with it. And how can that not be my favorite, right? Like how can it not, But then it's also a question that's full of bias too, because every single movie of my dad's that I watched, I could see him in it, and I could see all kinds of things in it that I think a lot of people might, who didn't know him like that, be able to see. And so I'd be lying if I said that I even had a favorite, right? Because they're all like, and since he died, watching his stuff is like almost like talking to him for me. It's really cool. So I don't even know if you could say there's a favorite. But if I had to pick, it'd be Night.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, it's so interesting to me when you meet, when people get to see or meet people like yourself or your dad or Stephen King, just how sort of normal, let's put that in quotes, we all are. You guys aren't serial killers. You're not these dark, you're not gothy with wearing all black and black fingernails. You're a normal dude, but you got some crazy shit in your head, and you like to bring it to life. And I love that. I love that about it.
Yeah, I think everybody's got some crazy shit in their heads. I think it's just some of us got lucky.
I think that's a good takeaway from the panel, especially after talking about the veteran thing, is like if you got something dark, put it on paper.
Yeah,
like
it helps. I mean, it really helps, And in 2022, when there's all this awareness about things, like it really does help. Like if anybody's here or watching or listening, and there's something that's like tormenting you, write it down, write about it. Put it on paper. It helps.
Yeah,
I promise.
I love that. Brian, were there any other questions from the audience coming out?
No. I think we're winding down our panel here. We have another one coming up at 2:00. I do want to remind everybody, if you go to heavymetal.com, you get 35% off. They're not messing around. Using promo code FanConXR today, and maybe like a week, or I don't remember.
So we're gonna have the promo running for a week. It's 35% off on all of our magazines and books, so you can pick up Cold Dead War, either the single issues or the trade, which has a wonderful cover that somebody came up with. I won't say, but you can pick up the trade, or you can pick up issues of the Rise. And yeah, 35% off your entire purchase order. So grab as much as you can, because that's a huge discount. But the only thing not on there is the merch. So these lovely shirts, they're brand new, so they're not part of the discount deal. But any of our books or stories that we're talking about at any of these
okay.
points.
We want people to read comic books, not just get Avengers and Heavy Metal T-shirts. We want them, and action figures. We want them to read comic books. Read the stories. As a retailer, we get these kids that come in with their families, and all they want is action figures and apparel. And I love it when mom and dad say, "No, you got to get a book. You gotta.
Yeah.
We're here to read."
Yeah. But I do want some T-shirts though.
Sure.
I will get you some T-shirts.
I think George wants a T-shirt, and I think we all want some of your delicious food you're cooking up in that Romero's kitchen out in Kentucky.
Yeah, man.
And obviously, everybody should go to RomeroPictures.com. Maybe even check out the book you just put out on screenwriting. And we really appreciate you taking the time. Sorry it didn't work out in VR, but I think we have another panel coming up at 7 o'clock. We're going to try to work that out and get you in VR, right?
Yeah. We're gonna try to work it out by then. That's 10 o'clock my time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 East, or wherever you are in the world. And we got Matt Medney, the publisher and also creator. Blake Northcott's going to be on that one. I think Bob Fingerman might have canceled because he pulled COVID this week.
But yeah, there will be a lot of great creators still. We're going to have your friends Blake and Brendan will be there, George.
Nice.
Brendan's very excited to talk with you again. And I'm excited to see the two of you in a room again. For those who didn't see them last year, they're quite a pair. And yeah, so we're gonna have that later on today, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Cool.
Perfect.
And I did want to mention, out of all those things, there's also, again, the Veterans Compound. You guys can find more information on that. You can also donate, I believe, and help support that. I like to throw that out as much as I can because very similar to George, I grew up around a lot of veterans. So, I like to throw that out there as well.
And coffee coming your way, right? Coffee.
Yep. Coffee's coming out. It's called Resurgent. Veterans Compound is veteranscompound.org. Romero Pictures is the book and kind of updates on anything else I'm working on there. Facebook. RomerosKentucky.com is the website for the restaurant. So if you want to look at some ridiculous food porn and some sandwiches the size of your face, go check that out.
Thanks for taking the time with us.
George, what's your Instagram and your Twitter? Because that's where I see all of my food stuff from you.
I don't even know. I think it's just George C. Romero.
I am George Romero on Instagram and George C. Romero on Twitter.
I think it's reversed.
Oh, is it reversed?
Yeah. I think the I am is Twitter, and I'm pretty sure.
Find it. All right, we're going to get to our next panel. We got another spotlight with Jerry Duggan in the Promenade world. Everybody can go back to the lobby, hang out for a few minutes, and then portal over either from the Undead District or from the lobby right to the Promenade with 2 p.m. Thanks, George, for taking the time with us. Glad we were able to work this out and have a chat after all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So there are, I don't know where the portals are. There are 2 portals, one that'll take you back to the lobby, one that'll take you to the next world where Jerry Dugan will be there. He will be an avatar, hopefully. We won't have any more glitches. George updated his headset and then it logged him out. So that's why we had to do this on Zoom. You've all been in headsets, and so you understand